For years, we would have people come through here, it seemed like for about a decade, with the same prophetic word for us, that small is God's next big. And nobody knew what that meant. We'd say, okay, we've been hearing that. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to us? Nobody seemed to really understand, but they knew it was from the Lord. And in 2014, I had an encounter with the Lord in which I think he showed me what it meant. And he reminded me of something myself and Francis Frangipan and Mike Bickle and some other friends had done for a period of time, where we were going around doing these unity meetings. And we would only go to a city if a high percentage of the churches would come together to sponsor us, to ask us to come, because we were seeking unity in the church because of the power that is released through unity. And the Lord asked me in 2014, how much unity did you create from those meetings? And when the creator of the universe asks you a question, the omniscient God, he's not seeking information. He was trying to get me to think, how did that work out? And I'm thinking, we had some awesome conferences. Incredible things happened. But really, I don't know that we left the church in any more unity than when we got there. I don't know if that worked at all. And I knew the Lord was agreeing with me. And he said, did you ever consider that when I said that if just 2 or 3 gather, there I will be in the midst of them, that if you try to do it with more than that, I'm not going to be there? I said, Lord, I've never thought of that. He said, if there's more than 2 or 3, I will get lost in it. And in this age, he's not going to go anywhere he's not really wanted. You see that in Revelation 3:20, when he stands outside the door of his church, knocking on the door of his own church to see if anyone will open to him. In this age, you've got to want him. But he said if we had just gone to a place to get maybe 2 churches together to sponsor these, they would have connected. Some unity could have built. Or 3 at the most. And now my point is, I think a lot of us want to start something. And God put it in us in the beginning to bear fruit and multiply. There's something in us to do it and do it big. But I don't think we can despise the small beginnings that anything of significance will always start with. And, where it talks about if just 2 or 3 will agree, the Lord will do it. We'll come together, we'll do it. Now, I've got my Greek scholar over here. He's a real Greek. And, but that word agree there doesn't mean just shaking hands, gather with me, agree with me on this thing, brother. Or that's not what he's talking about. The same word is a word we derive our English word symphony from. And 2 or 3 aren't going to make a symphony, but they can begin something that will be a huge symphony. But it requires, one thing it requires is years and years of practicing their instrument so that they can play with 1 or 2 other people, learn to play with one other, then 2, then more, and then you learn your section and all that. You can grow into something, but it starts with that years of personal devotion, personal practice, and all, and then 1 or 2 more and building upon that. And that can only be done by the way we're called to do church. But 2 or 3 people can make one of the most powerful congregations, bodies there is on the planet, if they come into that and become that symphony as just two or three with that level of unity and learning to function together, they're a power team that no power in hell can stop. And I think one of the things God's calling us to do is find those other two or three people, or the other person we're supposed to connect with. Now, I shared with you how the Thursday on how, Barnabas had to go and get Paul before either one of them could be promoted to their own ultimate calling. There are divine relationships. There are divine connections we have to make and link together with before we can go to the next level very often. In my case, in my history, some of the people that meant the most to me in my life, I didn't even like at first. A couple of them I very much disliked. Lord, show me, I need this person. Now, one of the things that I think is most dividing the body of Christ is we're always trying to be with like-minded people. I'm just asking you to consider that. It's really, we would like to stay in our comfort zone. But the unity that allows this body to live, it's not a unity of conformity. I'd be in really bad shape if all my organs start trying to be the heart and do what the heart does. No, the unity that makes this body work is a unity of diversity, respecting our own parts, respecting the differences, the uniqueness. And I think this is absolutely required if we're going to know our Creator and walk with Him. He so loves diversity. Look at how different He made every one of us. They say every snowflake is different. But He obviously loves diversity. And His unity is a unity of diversity, not a unity of conformity. And it's going to take sacrifice. I think I'm one of the most effective marriage counselors I've ever heard of. Because I tell people the truth. I know Susie, when she and Cameron were getting married, they wanted me to marry him. I said, okay. And I explained to them right up front, anybody I ever married or did marriage counseling with, they'll tell you, I told them, this relationship is ordained in heaven. It can be one of the most powerful relationships on earth if you both come into the unity you're called to. But the Lord has ordained this from eternity to kill you both. It's a divine trap, and you're going to die. You are going to die. There's no way you can survive this without dying. Now, I think we do a lot better to tell people that when they come to the church. Listen, this is a quarry where all the rough edges are being worked on, and we keep wanting to have this ideal. Human idealism is one of the biggest enemies of revelation. And we have this ideal of what the church is supposed to be, and no church could ever measure up to that. It's not supposed to. And I know a lot of people today say, well, I'm going to come back to the church when it gets its act together. I say, you'll never find it. It'll be so far down the road, you'll never catch up. Because it's the process we go through to become what we're called to be, that we all need to become what we're called to be. And if you can stay in unity, you're going to grow in love, you're going to grow in patience, you're going to grow in all these other things that are required for us to be what we're called to be. And you try to run from that, it is not going to work. You can get all the revelation of the world, have all knowledge, everything else. But guess what? It can count for nothing. It can count for nothing. Now, all that was free. But I do want to continue to make the point, we've really got to understand diversity. We've really got to understand how much we need the distinctions and the differences in the body of Christ. You know, racism is one of the most deadly problems in the world today. It's going to get worse. You know, when Jesus was asked about the signs of the end of the age, one of the things he said, nation would rise against nation, and that word there, Greek word, wasn't it, Nick? It was ethnos. Means ethnic. He wasn't talking about countries fighting each other. He's talking about ethnic conflict. Well, the church is supposed to be the antithesis to that, where we're a house of prayer for all ethnos. Same name, same word. All ethnic groups. Where we should so love uniqueness and differences that when we meet someone who is different from us, we light up. We don't get fearful, or we don't start trying to measure ourselves against them, that we're better than them or anything. We wouldn't do that. But where we look at, when we meet someone who's really different from us, where here's somebody I can learn from. They're seeing things I don't see. That's why Paul didn't say, I have the mind of Christ. He said, we have the mind of Christ. Okay, it takes all of us together. I believe when he made man in his image, he wasn't talking about us having arms and legs like him. He made mankind in his image, and it takes all of mankind and all of its unique diversity to really represent who he is. I'm just saying. Did Jesus ever do any work the same way twice? I haven't found where he did anything the same way twice. Why do we keep trying to get these formulas and principles and it's going to work this way? We think if we say the magic words, God will do it. You know what that is? It's witchcraft. It's counterfeit spiritual authority. No, he responds when we have faith in a person, him. And it's personal. And true faith is not faith in an outcome, it's faith in a person. So now there are a lot of outcomes I want. I think it's right to ask for them, get specific. But really, we're trying to see him. True faith is simply seeing him in whom we believe, who he is and where he sits. And the more clearly we can see him, the more we're going to believe. And so, how do we see what he's doing? If you remember anything I shared Thursday morning, you know, where Jesus, he only did what he saw the Father doing. Everyone he prayed to get healed got healed. Every single one. You know, we can walk in that level of healing. Now, it wouldn't mean for most of us, we wouldn't be praying for everybody we're praying for. I'm just saying. I mean, Jesus stepped over how many people at that pool of Siloam? He could have healed. He had the power to heal. He just heals one person because that's all the Father showed him to heal. And so seeing him and following him, we're following Emmanuel, not a manual. You know, we're following a person. We've got to see him. Now, there are many ways, we have many things we've shared and we'll share in the future about how we open the eyes of our heart, open our spiritual eyes to see. But where we're seeking to walk in these times, where we're going to have to walk in the not too distant future, is where what we see with the eyes of our heart, our spiritual eyes, is more real to us than what we're seeing with our natural eyes. We're like Elisha and his servants sitting on the side of the hill, a whole army coming and surrounding them. And Elisha's not even anxious. His servant was, until Elisha prayed for his eyes to be opened. Then he said, whoa, those who are with us are many more than those who are with our enemies. So it's seeing. Seeing is a real key to walking in the works of God, especially as we progress on into the greater works. Now, as we're young and immature, He'll bless many things. But you know, the Lord will bless many things He will not inhabit. We want to be His habitation, where it's not just us doing the works, it's Him doing His works through us, through His body. But where we are the dwelling place of God. Now, I want to share in just a few minutes what I believe is the most powerful revelation we could ever have in this life. And it will release more power in us and through us than anything else if we see it and we obey the revelation. It's not just hearing the words of the Lord, it's doing them that counts. Now, I'd just like to say, one of the things I've been trying to do for years, is to be like my dogs. Now it's dog singular. We just lost one, but my dogs, I want to follow the Lord the way they follow me. I work at the house most of the time, and if I twitch, they can be in the corner sleeping or something. If I twitch, their eyes open. And they can tell if I'm moving. If I'm moving, they're standing up, getting ready. I go into the next room, they're going to be right there behind me. They're not going to let me out of their sight. I believe that's the way I want to be to the Lord. If He twitches, I see it. It wakes me up because my focus, my attention, I'm tuned in on Him. You know what I'm saying? By the way, one of the words for worship is, I've heard it defined as the way a dog licks the hand. But it has to do with that kind of devotion that a dog has for us. And by the way, I'm not going to go there. I'll get off track. But that's the way we've got to be with the Holy Spirit. All right? Just a few other key basic things. Spiritual authority is built on compassion. When Jesus felt compassion for the sheep without a shepherd, He became their shepherd. When He felt compassion for those who were in darkness, He became their teacher. And it is being linked and unified with the love of God is by which we receive authority from God. This is our link. And I believe this is also true in miracles, especially healing miracles and things. And how do we get words of knowledge usually for healing? Almost everybody I know gets them by feeling in their body something, and they know, okay, somebody here's got that problem. I've been almost crippled 4 times where I got my knees, I've got catcher's knees and problems with my knees, but 4 times I got so bad I couldn't walk up steps like that, just 2 or 3 steps. 4 times I've been completely healed. Right now I'm healed. And it just happened this summer. Why do I keep falling out of the healing? That's another thing we need to talk about. But I remember one of the times when I was getting the worst, I was really thinking, I am very soon going to be in a wheelchair. I just can't do it. I know God's healed me before He's going to do it, but until then, I can't keep doing this. I was walking down Main Street with a couple of friends, Randy Stromback and Rick Stoker, and I think it was Randy said, "Is there something wrong with your knees?" I said, "Why do you ask?" He said, "Because my knees are killing me, and I don't have anything wrong with my knees." He knew that was a word of knowledge from God because He feels our pain And when we start identifying with him, coming into unity with him about healing or anything else, we start to feel what other people are feeling. That's how most people I know get words of knowledge for healing and other things, for deliverance. If you walk into a shop and all of a sudden you start feeling some evil, like, say, depression. I know a lot of people, when that happens to them, they immediately look at themselves and think, why am I getting depressed? What's wrong with me? That's a word of knowledge. You know, one of the things we've got to do to see is get out of ourselves. Get out of the self-focus about everything and be looking for what God is doing. But you just ran in, somebody there is really fighting depression. Now, you know, when you feel it, you start having compassion for those who have the problem. John G. Lake would not quit praying for someone until he felt the compassion of God for that person. Tells a story about one person he prayed for 14 hours straight until he felt God's compassion, not his compassion. It's another thing we've got to mature into. But when he knew this is supernatural, he may have been saying, I don't even like this lady. But all of a sudden he loves her. You know, okay, that's supernatural. And sometimes it is that dramatic. But that's when he saw the miracles. He always knew as soon as he felt the compassion of God, it's done. It is done. So now, I remember one time, we used to make jokes about getting prophetic words about somebody has a headache. And nobody wanted to get a word like that. Nobody would give it. And half the people have a headache after that sermon. You know, it's just, of course people have headaches everywhere. So we would make fun about that. And then I'd get up one time in one of our Friday night School of the Spirit meetings, seeking the Lord for words of knowledge. You know what he says? Somebody here has a headache. I'm going, no, Lord, no, don't make me do that. He said, give that word. I knew it. I mean, I had to do it. So I said, okay, somebody here has a headache. And about 15, 20 people all raised their hand. I prayed for them, and then the Lord gave me another part. He said, and it's affecting your vision. I shared that. A bunch of people admitted, yeah, it's affecting my vision. So we went on. I saw this lady way in the back get really animated and start pointing at the banners in the room and everything. I didn't know what was going on. It was, you know, but a bunch of people claimed to have gotten healed of their headaches and other stuff. But after the meeting was over, a woman came up to the front. I was still up there talking to people, and she came up and she said, I think you need to talk to my friend. I said, really? What happened? She said, well, I came here, I was totally blind. She said, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see you. I couldn't see anything up front. I could see like a light, a very dim light where I knew that must be the stage or something, but I couldn't make out anything else. And she said, I had asked my friend, the one who had brought her up to the front, to take me home because my headache was getting so bad I couldn't stand it. And that's when you said, somebody here has a headache. So she just paused. And then when I said the rest, and it's affecting your vision, she said, I knew that was me, and I knew God was wanting to touch me. And he did. Immediately, I had perfect vision, and I started reading the banners all over the... And then her friend, you know, hands her this tiny little New Testament, tiniest lettering, and this lady's reading that without glasses. totally healed. Guess what? I didn't get to parade that all over the place. All the people left. Nobody else saw this. I didn't get any glory from this. Don't, I know another case, actually several, where someone get a word of knowledge. God wants you to know he loves you. He loves everybody. We know that. That's scriptural, whatever. Of course he does. But no, he wanted that person told. And a couple of times we know when people were going to commit suicide that night, if they did not somehow come to know that God loved them. And when they got pointed out and told that simple thing, and that was the only thing, it changed their whole life and maybe saved their life. So we can't despise these small things, these really general words. They can be so powerful, so important. All we need to do is be obedient. If we're faithful in the little ones, he'll give us bigger ones or more spectacular ones. I don't think that really counts. I don't think that really should matter. It should matter what the fruit is. Also, just, we need to distinguish between human sympathy and God's compassion. It's important if we're going to mature. Now, as we're growing, as we're maturing, the Lord has child-proofed his house. He's going to let us get away with a lot, and we're not going to do it right. I don't know we'll ever do it perfectly in this life. And he grades on a curve, where we may think we're total failures. He may see us a huge success. I want to agree with him. Isn't that what happened with Moses at the burning bush? The Lord tells him, you're going to go set my people free and do all this. And Moses said, I'm not capable, Lord. I can't do that. I can't talk. I can't whatever. And what does it say? How did the Lord respond to that? It says, the anger of the Lord burned against Moses. Because Moses was making it all about him. He was basically saying to God, my inadequacy is stronger than your adequacy. You cannot use a poor vessel like me. Guess what? If you're going to wait until you're ready, you're never going to get used. If you're going to wait until you think you're ready, until you think you're mature enough, until we think we're wise enough, holy enough, whatever, we're probably not going to get used. That's not why we get used. Because of what he did and because of his sacrifice, because of his blood, he is our righteousness, not we ourselves. We're never going to be wise enough, never going to be worthy enough. It's not about us. Somehow we've got to get our attention off of ourselves and onto him. Now, John Wimber used to tell us faith is spelled R-I-S-K. Now, John, he really lived that. He did some of the craziest things. And, but I think some of the greatest miracles I've ever seen or heard of happened there for a period of time, the early days of the vineyard, which I was never a part of the vineyard, even though I spoke at their conferences and all, but I was friends with John and a lot of the vineyard leaders. But I think it was one of the most spectacular miracle movements on such a scale I still have ever seen or heard of. And I've studied history for over 50 years. Mostly church history. I've studied every revival and everything. Most of them are led by a handful of people that do this stuff. Everybody else gets blessed and everything, but it's really a handful of people. I tell you, you went to a vineyard church there for a period of time, everybody in that congregation could pray for the sick and get them healed, cast out demons, get people saved, preach the gospel. They were equipped to do these basic things, and they did them with great boldness, and then they didn't go parading them around, boasting about them. I was shocked at some of the stuff that happened. I remember I was speaking at the Anaheim Vineyard Church one Sunday morning, or I was waiting to speak, and while I was sitting there, this demon-possessed giant came in. I mean, this guy was huge. He was massive. And I think he had legion. There were thousands of people there, and he's kicking chairs and cursing and everything. It was outrageous. And of course, he's coming my way. You know? And this little usherette, I mean, she couldn't have been 5 foot nothing. She jumped up in his face in the name of Jesus. He hit the deck, started doing the flounder, you know, flopping all over the ground. She pounced on his chest. And she is, in the name of Jesus, stop. That thing shut down. Come out of him now. It comes out of him. She stands him up, makes him sit down, shut up. Sit here in this service. You're going to get saved. And the guy was in his right mind. It was that quick. And that kind of stuff was common. That was the only place. You know, for a period of time, there were amputated limbs being restored in meetings. You could hear teeth popping back into people's mouths. It sounded like popcorn popping in their mouths. There was stuff like that. They'd be getting perfect teeth back, and incredible miracles like that were going on for a period of time. And I tell you this, I love the vineyard. I love all the vineyard people. It was a mess. I was the one who introduced Leonard Ravenhill to John Wimber because I wanted to sell tickets to the fight. I knew this has got to be, you know, Leonard is this super holiness. I used to go visit him at his home occasionally, and when you came in the door, he would check the knees of your pants to be sure you'd been praying enough. And he literally, I mean, he used to write me a letter. I'd get a letter from him almost every week from Leonard Ravenhill. And I knew what the message was in it. He had the worst handwriting I've ever seen in my life, but I didn't even have to read it. I knew what was in it. He was trying to convince me of how every other Bible but the King James Bible is heresy, and you keep coming in here with these off Bibles. He didn't like that. I didn't care. I couldn't read the King James at that time, but anyway, I thought, you know, Mike Bickle had always dreamed of meeting Leonard Ravenhill. He didn't know he was still alive. And I said, I know Leonard. I can introduce you. I took Mike down to meet him and everything. They really hit it off. And Leonard goes to it was Kansas City Fellowship at the time. An incredible thing broke out. So we introduced him to John Wimber. And I was wanting to sell tickets to this fight. Because one thing the vineyard was, I think holiness was not one of them. You know, you go there on Sunday morning, you could tell some of these girls sitting there in the church service, that's not really a bikini. You're missing some there. They were all dressed. I mean, it was Southern California, you know, it was California sunshine. I'm just saying. But, and then when John invited Leonard to speak at the Anaheim Vineyard, I said, I got to go there and see this. I have to see this. I couldn't imagine what's going to happen. And were you there? You weren't? We got Bob Joyner over there, you know. He's usually in the middle of stuff like that. But anyway, I was determined to watch it. I thought this is not going to work. Not going to work at all. And I thought Leonard's going to download his typical holiness message on him. He didn't. He preached Jesus. And within a few minutes, I mean, it was minutes, you could see the girls covering themselves up. You could see something's going on here. Another few minutes, people start sliding out of their chairs onto their faces. And all Leonard's doing is preaching Jesus. And a holiness movement started in the vineyard, and Leonard did not say one word about holiness, or especially not his concept of it. I'm just saying, I love Leonard, but you know, Angus Buchan, when he came to America the first time, he came here, and we were in one of our rooms down there. Do you know who Angus Buchan is? South African, faith like a potato. One of the great men of God, one of the greatest men's movements I've ever seen. He would have men's conferences with 500,000 men who would come and camp out for a week or 10 days. And to me, it was one of the greatest men's movement or any movement I'd ever seen. But anyway, Angus comes here, and while he's here, and we're all meeting in one of our rooms down there with some of our leadership team, the president or the head of Prime Minister of South Africa calls him. So he takes the call, and we're sitting down there, and he asks Angus, he said, we're about to break up into a civil war. And Nelson Mandela had already died, and Angus at that time had more clout with the people of South Africa than probably any politician, anybody else. And this president was begging Angus to come back. We're having a miners' strike. It's getting violent, you know, in the diamond mines and all. He said, we're about to have a civil war. Can you come back and do something? So we prayed for Angus to get a word of wisdom. He wanted to know first it was God's will, then what do I do? So we prayed for him, and he went back. And he told him, I'll only come back if you'll gather all of the mine owners, all of their leaders, managers, everything, and all the union people, the leaders of the workers, and the workers themselves. In the biggest stadium, I think it was in Johannesburg, and they filled that stadium up with those who wanted to kill each other. And Angus said he would only come if they would do that. So they all went because of the stature he carried. And you know what he did? He didn't address any of the issues. He preached Jesus. And pretty soon they're pouring down to the altars. And mine owners are next to workers praying to receive Jesus together. Soon praying for each other. You didn't hear anything else in the news about those mine strikes after that. You know, Jesus really is the answer to every human problem. It's him. Why is the apostolic gospel not preached? What was the apostolic gospel? They preached Jesus and the resurrection from the dead. That was it. You know, the spirit of prophecy is testimony of Jesus. But I think, you know, it's not just preaching miracles, not just preaching what he does, it's preaching him. It's preaching him. When he's lifted up, not our doctrines, not our churches, not our movements. When he really gets lifted up, all men are going to come. Okay, we know there are many distinctions and differences, different ministries. His body's made up of many different ministries, but it's how they fit together that really counts. But the main thing that counts, are we connecting with him? You know, you cannot be truly connected to the head without also being connected to his body rightly. We got to have each other. It's not going to work. We're not going to do it by ourselves. We're going to do it as a member of his body, fit in where we're supposed to be. But he's not going to do it without his body. He's going to do it through his body. Now, Margaret Browning said, "Earth is crammed with heaven, and every bush is aflame with the fire of God. But only those who see take off their shoes, the rest just pick the berries." Do we see? You know, I think it was C.S. Lewis that wrote about how we get impressed when the Lord turns water into wine, when he does it fast. But there's never been any wine that ever became wine that it didn't become wine because he turned it into wine from water. The processes he made in the earth. Things happen. Whether it happens fast or slow, it's still God and still a miracle. Now, I don't think any healing. You know, we love the ones that are healed instantly, but I don't think there's ever been a healing done that wasn't done by God. And some of it is just the natural processes that he put in our bodies to heal itself. It's still him. He put those there. You know, and do you know supernatural is supernatural? I think when we start seeing him in the natural, we're going to see him a whole lot more. And I think as we see him, we grow in faith in him and what he's doing. Now, too, I love it when he speeds it up. You know, instantaneous miracles. We've been blessed to see some extraordinary ones. But here's the greatest, one of the greatest, it leads up to the greatest important truth that I believe we could ever have as human beings. Colossians 2:2-4, that their hearts may be encouraged, having been knit together in love, and attaining to all the wealth that comes from the full assurance of understanding, resulting in a true knowledge of God's mystery. Then he says what the mystery is. That is Christ himself, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. It's not knowing about him, not just knowing where he sits, it's knowing him. It's abiding in him. We only have true spiritual authority to the degree that the King lives within us and that we're united with the King. We get our authority from him. Now, we know from John, he was the creator. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness. Darkness didn't comprehend it. I believe many Christians are still doing what they were doing in Athens. Many who call themselves Christians really believe in the Christian doctrine. They're still worshiping an unknown God. They're worshiping facts about him, maybe real facts, real truth. We've got to know him. Many come to know the way. A few more are going to know the truth. Not many go on to know him as their life. And if we don't really know him as our life, we don't really know the way or truth either. Because the way is not just getting a few facts together and agreeing with those facts. The way is a person. Truth isn't just getting our doctrines accurate, though we want to do that. But it's not just being accurate in our doctrines. Truth is a person. And if we don't know that person as our life, I don't think we really know the way or truth either. Now, there can still be benefit to knowing the truths and knowing the way. But the demons know the way. You know, demons know the gospel of salvation. They're not saved. You know, it wouldn't have done you any good on the day of Passover, first Passover, to know that a lamb had to be slain. That wouldn't have done you any good. Wouldn't have done you any good to slay the lamb and eat it in your house. That would not have spared you. The blood had to be applied. Is his blood being applied to our life? The life is in the blood. Is his life being applied to our life? That's by which we're saved. Listen, the demons know the doctrines better than most Christians. We've got to go beyond that. We've got to know him. It says, Romans 1:20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen. There's only a few times in Scripture when that phrase is used, clearly seen, and it represents something very high level. Not even the normal seeing, but have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. Okay, there's a way that the creation reveals him, like every bush is aflame with the fire of God. Can we see it? This is what we're talking. We've got to have the eyes of our hearts open to see. Now, so, it talks about in Psalm 19:1, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Do we see that? I mean, there's some ways we do. We get impressed, more and more impressed with what's being discovered. I shared this with you Thursday morning. This picture, which I'm going to show you now. You know that picture? It's been called the most important image ever taken. Ever. It's called the Hubble Deep Field. And why would that picture be the most important picture ever taken? Because they were taking a picture of what they believed was empty space, where nothing was. And what you see in this picture is about 2,000 galaxies, each one with hundreds of billions of stars. And we thought there's nothing there. They said, when the word was first put out, I remember watching some of the programs. This is the first picture taken by the Hubble telescope. They said they pointed at empty space as like a square inch. If you could imagine pointing a telescope at a square inch of blank sky at night, took the picture. It was a time picture, so, and then finding this in it. They said actually it would have been more like pointing your telescope at a grain of sand in the night sky. It was that small. It's got 2,000 galaxies in it. And that's what I was told a few years ago the Lord's going to do to us. He called it the miracle of the Hubble. He's going to do for us what was done to the Hubble telescope, and what was done to it when they first put it up there. All the fanfare. Started taking pictures of space. They couldn't see anything. It was blurry. The vision, it didn't work. The telescope didn't work. So you know what they had to do? They said, grounding that lens, the lens had to be perfect to see that deep into space. What you're looking at in this picture, these galaxies are, some of them, billions of light years from Earth. A light year is how far light travels in a year. They were that far out. To have the kind of clarity to pick up light and for it to be, not blurred, to be clear, that telescope, that lens had to be so perfect. It wasn't perfect, though. They said it was off. I think Nick told me the other day it was off by 1/50th, the width of 1/50th of a human hair. And they couldn't see anything. They had sent astronauts up to put what they called a contact lens on the Hubble. And then they want to see, can it see anything? Is it fixed? They pointed at this empty space first, and this is the first picture ever taken. Why is it called the most important image ever taken? It opened the minds of everybody who, astronomers, physicists, everybody who was keeping up with this. All of a sudden, our universe is millions of times bigger than we thought. Where we thought at the time there are a few 100 million galaxies out there, instantly became trillions of galaxies out there. Now that's a jump. We're going to get that kind of jump. And one of the things it's going to do, we're going to be able to look at people where we think there's nothing in that person, and God's going to open our eyes to what he's doing. We're going to look at churches, and we're going to think nothing's going on in that church. All of a sudden, he's going to open our eyes, and we're going to see stuff we could never imagine. We're going to look at nations the same way. I think it's the basis of the Ezekiel 37, one of the most important anointings that we can have in this time or any time is what Ezekiel had there when he could see in a valley full of dry bones an exceedingly great army and prophesy life to those bones until they became what they were called to be. There's a saying that any jackass can kick a barn down, but it takes a skillful carpenter to build one. You know, we got plenty of critics. We got plenty of prophetic critics who all they do is criticize the church. Basically what they're doing is telling the bones how dry they are. You idiot, nobody knows that more than the bones. You know, that's not prophetic ministry, that is pathetic ministry. Who can see people not as they are, but as they're called to be? And start prophesying life so that they can start to move and come together and become what they're called to be. That's the anointing we want. Now, that one picture, the Hubble Deep Field, changed our whole perspective of the creation. In some ways, profoundly, radically changed our perspective of the creation or what has been made. I think we need such a transformation. Christians need such a transformation. You know, one of the things they learn right away, we don't know as much as we think we know about anything. Science. They're saying all of a sudden they're getting really humble. This thing is so big, we thought we knew. We don't know much at all. Guess what? The greatest theologians in the world don't know near as much as they think they do. Greatest preachers, teachers, writers, we all know in part. We know a little part. We're about to have our understanding of God expanded like this thing did to us. Okay? Now, so, Lord's going to enlarge our vision, but remember this, you don't have to know everything. Vance Havner, remember the great evangelist, Vance Havner? He said you don't have to know all about electricity to turn the switch on. We can't know everything there is to know. Nobody can. We all know in part, we see in part. To have the whole picture, we got to come together. And we got to have the humility to come together. Understand, we need to put ours together with what others have. But he's about to do something that's going to really expand our vision and our mind. Now, Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these will he do because I go to the Father. He said if we really believe in him, we're going to do the works that he did and even greater works. I think we got a ways to go. Now, that word is believe into him. Are we believing into him? Listen, I was so arrogant. This just a few years ago. I was sitting on my porch over here, and I'm just calling out to God, Lord, I want to preach the apostolic. God, I want to preach Christ. I want to, preach the resurrection, but I just need some new material. I've run out of material. And I've read the scriptures at least once a year for over 50 years. And I just need some more material. A little wren, a little sparrow lands on the banister right in front of me. And I knew this, sparrows don't do that. They'll come close sometimes, but not this close. I could almost reach out and touch it. And it's looking at me. And I'm looking at it. And all of a sudden, I got a download of revelation of Christ, the Creator. I don't think it lasted more than a minute. But my first response was, Lord, it's going to take more than one life for me to just process what you just showed me. He can do that sometimes. I said, I'll be the rest of my life. He said, yeah, no, it's going to be longer than that. You're going to be eternity learning the depths of Christ. Eternity. Doesn't it say in Ephesians 1, all things are going to be summed up in him? All things. Every one of us, the ultimate goal of God for every one of us is that we're summed up in Christ. He is everything. He's what we're after. And trust me, we're going to be learning of him. Now, when we become like him in some ways at the resurrection, but listen, we are going to be learning forever. We're going to be perpetually fascinated, awed. It is not going to be boring. I remember when I was a new Christian, I first read Isaiah 6. Here these cherubim going, holy, 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 day and night, forever. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is filled with his glory. First thing I thought, they're lying. They are lying. With all the child abuse, the racism, the wars, and all the evil, how could they possibly say the whole earth is filled with his glory? They got to be bored out of their minds. Can you imagine forever just going, holy, holy, holy? That's how I was saying. I'm a new Christian. I'm even stupider than I am now. But that was the way I thought about it. And then the Lord spoke to me. He said, the reason they could say that, the whole earth is filled with his glory, when you're in my presence, all you can see is glory. And if you walk in my presence and abide in my presence, everyone you look at, you're going to start to see my glory in them. You're going to start to see my glory in what I'm doing with them, where I'm like, you're going to start to abide in his glory. And all you're going to be doing is holy, holy, holy. But they weren't just going holy, holy, holy. It wasn't some religious exercise. It was like they were going, holy, did you see that? I mean, it was like perpetual, unbelievable amazement at God, and they had the best seats in the house. Are we fascinated with him? I tell you, there is no more fascinating being ever in the universe in all of eternity than him. We've got him living inside of us. Do we even realize that? Who is living in us? That's what Paul said. Don't you understand? You're the temple God's in you. Well, have you ever wondered why all the great moves of God in history are outpourings, not downpourings? He's about to be revealed in his people, through his people. It's going to start with us seeing him in here, in us. Now, let me just say this. There's fake news. You guys understand there is fake news. I think most of the news is fake, my opinion, but it's twisted, distorted, politicized. It's from both directions. There's fake science also, a lot of it. And I can tell you this about true science. They're not made true scientists. They're not made true disciples of Christ. You read the qualifications for being a disciple. You read what Jesus said his disciples would be, and you think, I don't even know one. Listen, you can still be saved and not be a disciple. I think the multitudes that followed him, they believed in him. They believed in his miracles, his power, and all this, or they wouldn't have been following him. They experienced and saw all that, but only a few were disciples. Now, the Great Commission is to make disciples, not just converts. There's merit to being a believer and doing the best you can. Lord knows those who are his, but there's a whole new level to being a disciple. Disciple doesn't, in those times, a disciple could not have any other thing in their life that would possibly distract them from learning of their master. And they woke up every day, first thought on their mind, what can I learn from my master today? What can I do to become more like my master today? We need disciples. We need to start becoming disciples. We need to make disciples. I tell you, there is nothing on this earth more contagious than someone who's getting closer to God. Everybody wants to be around. They don't know what it is, but there is nothing. There is no coronavirus or anything else even close to as contagious as hunger for God, love for God, and those who are getting closer to him. That's our number one job description, is loving God. As human beings, that's our number one job description. And one of the things going to determine if we were successful or not, how much do we love him? That's not something you can't just conjure up love. You've got to pursue. And there's something, I believe you cannot have a revelation of God without loving him more. He is love. You cannot learn or see any little thing about him without loving him more for it. But we need some true Christians. We need some true shepherds, true prophets, apostles, everything else. We need some true, who are true because they're living this. Now, this quote about science says, true science has more questions than answers. True science does not have any answers that cannot be questioned. You know who said that? The one who's still considered the greatest scientist there ever was, Albert Einstein. Now apply that to the way climate change is being presented. You question it, you're dead. You'll never be a scientist again. You'll lose your grants, you'll lose. That's not true science. True science wants to be challenged, wants to find any mistake, any flaw. Well, I tell you, I believe that should be the nature of true Christians too, because God resists the proud and gives his grace to the humble. And what could be more valuable to us than God's grace? I think there's a lot more fake science in the world than true science, but I think there's a lot more fake Christianity than true Christianity. True knowledge of God. Now, do you know that, I'm just going to have to give you a little bit of a science lesson. I'm not going to drag this out too much longer. But as long as you stay awake, I'm going to keep talking. Okay, but you know, Einstein's first theory of general relativity was wrong. It was flawed. He had included in it an equation where you had to divide by 0. Didn't you learn by the 4th grade you can't do that? How can you divide by 0? Why? So Einstein believed in a static universe. It's always been this way, will always be that way. Didn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. He was an atheist because he believed the universe was static. That would not work into his theory of general relativity, so he put this stupid equation in there of divide by 0 to make it work, to make it static. It was Edwin Hubble, that the Hubble telescope is named after, the astronomer who at the time had the biggest telescope in the world. And anyway, it was Hubble that gave Einstein his missing link that corrected his theory of relativity. And it brought about all the change, radical change we've experienced because of that. But he saw what was called the red shift. You ever hear of that? Hubble, which meant when an object is moving away from you, the light waves will get longer and longer and start to have a red tint to them. If an object is coming to you, towards you, it will have a blue tint because the light waves are shorter and shorter as it gets closer and closer to you. So when Hubble looked up and he tuned his telescope in every direction, he saw the red shift everywhere. He knew right away the universe is expanding. It is not static. When Einstein read that, he went himself out to California where Hubble had his telescope up on the mountain, went up there. He had to see it with his own eyes, but the minute he saw it himself, he believed in a creator. It couldn't be doing this. It couldn't be expanding if it didn't have a starting point. And if it had a starting point, somebody started this. That's when he started to believe. And anyway, you guys know this, E equal MC square? You know, that was his equation, basic equation of general relativity. There's a spiritual E equal MC square we're about to discover. Now, you know what the power of E equal MC squared is in the natural. E was for energy, M for mass, C for speed of light, squared. It was the conversion of energy to mass or mass to energy. Remember, if you know the basic first law of thermodynamics, law of conservation, all of you know all this, I know. But energy cannot be destroyed. It can change forms, but it cannot be destroyed. Neither can mass. It can change forms, but it can't be destroyed. You know, all of the matter in the universe was here instantly from what was scientists have called the Big Bang. I think there's a much better name for it, but that's what they call it. Instantly, all of the energy, all of the matter that is now in the universe was there in the very beginning in a very compact thing, and it's been expanding or exploding ever since. Okay? But energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change. Same with matter. But they can be converted. Matter can become energy, and energy can become matter. This is what led to the atomic bomb. You know how much mass was converted to energy in our first atomic bombs? 0.6 of a gram. And look at the power that was released. Do you know how light, how small a gram of anything is? How many grams are there in an ounce? You know what? A gram is 0.6 almost half of a gram was all it took to set off that kind of energy when it was converted. Guess what? We're going to see conversions of truth like this into power. Moving mountains is not going to be a big deal. You know, when Moses parted the Red Sea, the angels were bored. They had seen a lot better things than that. They had seen the heavens stretch out like a tent curtain. And now we understand how big those heavens are. I'm just saying, this miracle of the Hubble is coming. A spiritual E equal MC squared. All right? The theory of relativity is still a theory. Had many convincing evidences that it's true. Learning them all the time, that he really got it right. They're piling on. Has anyone here ever done any study of quantum physics or quantum mechanics? Okay. You can be a Christian, but let me just say this about quantum physics and quantum mechanics. They were the most bizarre theories anybody has ever come up with yet, even far more bizarre than the theory of relativity, where even time could change, time could stand still, where there could be actual places of infinity, of touching infinity and black holes and things like that. This was all in Einstein's equations, and now they're being proven. Quantum mechanics and quantum physics to me is far weirder than that, but it's about the small stuff, strands and all kinds of waves nobody's ever seen in even the most powerful microscopes, but we know they exist, even though they may not be in exactly the form we're given to them now, but we know they exist because of other observations. Like we learned there were black holes because of the gravitational pull. They had something that was black, looked like nothing in space, you can't see it, but it's having all this impact on all the stars and everything. They knew the mass of it had to be, they could compute what the mass was, and it was beyond anything we knew even existed. Okay, so there are ways they really can figure this stuff out, but all the ways that the theory of relativity has been seemingly proven or verified, they still don't consider, true scientists still don't consider, no, we got a ways to go yet to absolutely prove all this. Quantum physics and mechanics, same way. All kinds of ways it looks like this is really true. All this is accurate. It's behaving like we would expect. They're still calling it a theory. Guess what? They do not meet. The theory of relativity, which to me is about the universe, and quantum physics and mechanics that in many ways verify the theory of relativity, but a lot of things about them that have been verified do not connect in any way to the theory of relativity. They don't know how to connect them, but they know they're both true. This means there is such a massive hole in our understanding of things. We're only comprehending the smallest fraction of knowledge. I tell you, all the laws of physics we have, trust me, there are probably a gazillion more laws we don't know about yet. God's big. He is really big. Now, one of my favorite stories, I got a lot of favorite stories about Nicholas, this guy sitting over here with a white dog. But this is one of the most amazing. We're going to do some TV and get this down on video, Lord willing, real soon. But Nicholas's mother started painting galaxies and things like this. Well, wasn't that in the 60s or and 1960s or what? Yeah, Well, the way she was getting pictures of all these galaxies and things were the Lord would come and take her and show them to her out in space. Okay, but they didn't look like any that anybody had ever seen. And she has books, I mean, incredible pictures and all this stuff. No one knew they existed. They thought she's making stuff up until they turned the Hubble telescope on and they saw the pictures she had been drawing, that the Lord had taken her out to show her. Her paintings are in the Smithsonian now. NASA honored her in a big way. James Webb, who this new telescope is named after, actually invited Nick's mother to go for a ride on the space shuttle. And Nick's dad shot it down. Said, "You're not taking my wife up there." but that would have been cause for divorce in my book. Man, I'm going. But anyway, the incredible experience. Then the Soviet Space Agency brought them over. Nick went over there with his mother. He said he had never seen so many generals and cosmonauts and everybody all decked out to honor his mother because she had seen what nobody else had seen before anybody else had seen it. And they ran into how many of these cosmonauts were Christians. But I'm just saying, how about Psalm 19, verse 1? The heavens are declaring his glory. Now, I love this stuff. I love science. I mean, I love the greatest science more than any of the others. The greatest, I think, is theology. We're studying the Creator, not just the creation. But I love it all. I read it all, maybe too much, but I love it. But I know more than anything else, I am so excited about what I've been shown that I believe some of you sitting right here are going to actually see and walk in and experience. Our God is about to get much bigger. His creation's getting unbelievably big. We now believe there are trillions of galaxies, with each one with hundreds of billions of stars, and he stretched them out like a head tin curtain. Do you know we found out that if there weren't quasars billions of light years away, and they had to be that far away, we could not have a food chain on Earth? This is how linked everything is. If you know what a gamma burst is from a quasar, if one went off in our third of the Milky Way, which is huge, hundreds of billions of stars, in our third, it could wipe out all life on Earth within 20 seconds. It's how big those gamma bursts are. But after billions of light years of traveling through space, they're not quite that strong when they hit the Earth, but they're strong enough to do one thing. We used to think that lightning was created by positive and negative particles reaching up, trying to reach each other. Then they found out that's not what's going on at all. Gamma bursts are hitting thunderclouds and igniting the lightning, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have any plant life or any life on Earth. It's lightning striking the Earth, which it does 30 to 60,000 times a minute on Earth. If it wasn't for lightning striking the Earth and turning the nitrogen in the soil into that which could be absorbed in the plants, we wouldn't have any food. There would be no life on Earth. And it had to come from stars that far out. And we didn't even know gamma burst existed until we put up satellites to watch over the Soviet nuclear tests. And those satellites started getting hit by gamma bursts from space much stronger than the gamma bursts coming from the nuclear explosions on the Earth. They said, where's this coming from? They tracked it down. They learned all this. Just think God put all that out there so we could have a salad. thinking about us. He didn't want them close enough to kill us, just to feed us. And I don't know, this just really excites. We have such an awesome God. He is so much bigger than we have ever perceived. But here's the greatest secret, greatest knowledge that is going to release this in our lives. Colossians 1, 26 through 28. The mystery which has been hidden from the past ages and generations, but has now been manifested to his saints, to whom God willed to make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. The key to the spiritual E equal MC square, turning the matter, the truths, the knowledge into energy or power, is when we start to really see the one who lives within us. And we abide in him. We walk with him. If you had gotten out of bed this morning and he'd been standing next to your bed, how many of you would have had a little different day? 2 of you. You're more spiritual than I thought. How would it change us if we saw him first thing and then all day long? And we come to abide in him more and more. How much could he use us when we go to a place, instead of us being hit with this weird spirit and start thinking what's wrong with us, we start to discern the Lord is showing us something about somebody. He wants to help. He wants us to walk like he walked. Our job is to be like him and do the works that he did. And we start doing that, we really start walking in the knowledge of the one who lives within us. It's going to grow into greater works than even he did when he walked the earth. It's going to release, transforming a little bit of truth into life, into power. The power of life is going to be explosive like we've never seen before. And you know, if you ever read about the scientists, Oppenheimer and those guys who developed the first atom bomb, they didn't know really what was going to happen. They thought, when this thing goes off, we may not be able to control this chain reaction. It might blow up the world. They really thought it's possible this will consume all the energy and all the oxygen on Earth. They didn't know. One of the best, funniest science programs I ever saw was a reporter interviewing the scientists at that super collider they built in France and Switzerland. And this scientist was trying to explain to this reporter on the density of the mass of a black hole. And he said the density is so great, the gravitational force so powerful. He said even a small black hole could consume our entire solar system, just suck it right up if it came near to us. And he was explaining all this. And then he goes on, he said, okay, well, what are you trying to do with the super collider? Why are you just trying to get atoms to collide? And the scientist says, well, we're trying to recreate a small Big Bang, like created the universe. Just a replica of the Big Bang. And we think when we do this, it's going to create some really small black holes. And this reporter goes, how small? And the scientist immediately got it. He said, no, listen, and we're not going to blow up. He said, it won't. He said, how small? And the guy goes, well, we are totally confident in our calculations. And the guy goes, I'm not that confident. He said, we're not going to suck up the solar system or anything else with our little black holes. He said, well, suppose you just suck up Switzerland and France. That's still bad. Do you know what you're doing here? I mean, it was, I wish I could find that again but listen, our science, didn't you not learn under COVID? These guys really, thank God they're trying, but you know, they don't know near as much as they think they do. But thank the Lord, though, that they are trying. I do thank the Lord for, look, we wouldn't be here, wouldn't have this computer. How did Paul the Apostle do anything without one of these? You know, I mean, all the blessings we have from it. But listen, we're not near as smart as we think we are. And that's a good thing. Should keep us humble, and God gives us grace to the humble. We don't want to start thinking when the Lord uses us to do such great things, it's because of us. It's because of the one living within us. And our job is to be open for him to use us. Now, the Holy Spirit is the helper, not the doer. He won't do his part until we do our part. Our part is to know him, to seek him, to worship him, to see him, to preach him. And when he is lifted up, all men are going to be drawn. And it's going to be the greatest harvest ever seen. But listen, the power that's about to be released is on a whole new level than I'd ever perceived. I've been perceiving a lot for many years. I know it's going to be much, much bigger than that. We don't know who sitting at the table with us might be moving mountains around in the not too distant future, as God determines where he wants them moved. He hasn't given me that authority, because I'd be out there in the Rockies right now playing around, moving them where I want them to be. He's looking for a little maturity and a little stability so that we only do what we see him doing and don't just start wrecking things. Let's get there. What do we have better to do? So let's see some of the truth he's given to us converted to that power, that energy. Thank you so much.